Well, welcome back to the Select Start Fantasy Football Podcast. I am your host, Ace, back with my three amigos. First and foremost, we got the champ, Ian spelled backward in the house. 0-2 so far this year. Bit of uncharted territory for the commissioner, but good problems. His bench outscored most starters in our league. While Edgar's in the house, he's 2-0 and he smells like house money. And Kosher Killer, back with us this evening. And for the first time in my life, I can confidently say the prodigal son has returned. How we doing, fellas?
Fittingly, I got the bagel so far, too, in the win column. Looking to change that.
You're just going to keep updating the viewers on my record every week?
That's what happens.
And not only the record, but the standings. He's going to let everyone know the game's back.
Give a little context to the record. I played the two top scorers for the last 2 weeks who both had Packers in their lineups. Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones this week. Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting away from
the champ needs
those guys.
Context.
Next week is Aaron Rodgers on the docket, right?
No, my opponent next week has no Packers. So, but the way this season's been going, he might just score.
Next week, the Packers aren't going to do so hot just because your opponent doesn't have any of them.
Yeah, pretty much.
Your opponent might go pick up Chase Tunyon and find him having a week.
For real, like 4 touchdowns.
Talk about waiver wire pickups, major sleeper, deep league.
Before we get into our week 2 top performers and disappointments, first, just some general observations from you guys. Big Baller Brand, lead us off.
The biggest thing, obviously, so I'll hit on it since I'm starting us off, was the injuries. Everybody's heard about it, so we don't have to dive into these injuries. But as the week has progressed, just hearing new news, Devontae Freeman, I think, just actually signed with the Giants. So we have some clarity in that situation. And that's nice. Talking about clarity, the Rams have no clarity. The Bucks we thought had clarity, now we think they have clarity. But watch next week be the breakout week for some other running back on the roster. Watch J.J. Taylor be the running back for New England. Lots of backfields without clarity, and the injuries did nothing to it. If you're asking me to just bring it down to the shortest snippet, is that this weekend gave us less clarity than we had coming into it.
Kosher Killer.
And Edgar hit the nail on the head with the injuries. Selfishly, as a 49ers fan, not looking forward to his second game in a row on that MetLife Stadium turf after so many injuries on Sunday. You alluded to Devontae Freeman going to the Giants. That's because Saquon is now on injured reserve. The lack of a preseason, I think, is really hurting the guys, both in terms of the conditioning needed to make it through the games and in terms of developing that chemistry. We're not seeing consistency yet out of the rookies. And I mean, it's 2 games in. It's a very small sample size. We're not seeing a lot of comfort from guys like Phillip Rivers or Tom Brady with their new team. And those lack of exhibition games really didn't let them develop much timing with the players around them. And right now, fantasy owners and the fans are paying for it because they're trying to develop that in real time, but as the games count.
So many guys going down. The ripple effects of this week are going to be huge, not just in real football, in fantasy football. A lot of owners out there are going to have to scramble.
Let's get in some top performers and disappointments. Russell Wilson, he's a bad man. He's already thrown for 9 touchdowns in 2 games. He had 5 on Sunday against a good New England defense, might I add. Their next 3 opponents secondary can be had and have been had. Aaron Jones for the Green Bay Packers. He added 3 more touchdowns, making it 4 for him on the year. He's a guy that's looking like the ultimate value running back. And lastly, for me, Josh Allen. He's become, before our eyes, not one of the most fantasy relevant quarterbacks, but a true force at his position. He threw for another 4 touchdowns. I'll open up to you guys now. Who are your top performers on Sunday? Let's start it off with you, Nye.
But as a whole, I'm just going to give credit to the whole tight end position, but I'm going to be more specific with a guy who had a monster day, Mike Gesicki. Everybody saw that highlight reel one-handed catch. This is a player who had a lot of buzz coming into this year. Didn't really have a great week 1, but showed out against the Buffalo Bills. Definitely a guy that I see moving forward, especially with this offense. And Devontae Parker being a little bit banged up. Preston Williams, still kind of, finding his way after his injury last year. This is the guy they probably should be leaning on considering his talents. Like we saw what the tight end position did all weekend. man, he led the charge. One of the most athletically gifted guys at the tight end position. They need to focus on getting him the ball more and making him a priority. He is my top performer of the week. I love, to see what he's turning into. Great job, Mike Gesicki.
Nice, showing love to the tight ends. Big baller, jump in here, brother.
A lot of options, and I'm going to go with tight end as well. The biggest reason is because I really want to talk about what his role looks like going forward. After week 1, a lot of people might have been down on Tyler Higbee. In fact, I know that in another league, not the Select Star League, because the Select Star League knows better than to drop Tyler Higbee. Coming into this week, there was the slightest question about what was going on with him, but I don't believe there should have been. Gerald Everett was a limited participant most of last week. He was questionable going into the game. He actually played. Gerald Everett was the only concern I had for Tyler Higbee. Really, week 1 was not demonstrative of what I think the LA Rams offense was gonna perform like, the quality of that play. Of course, it was a great matchup this week. Rams versus Cowboys, lots of passing, but Higbee didn't just receive volume, he got touchdown volume. Aaron Jones was the man of the day with his 4 touchdowns, but Higbee reeled in 3, I believe, right, guys? If you're tight, like I know we're usually playing tight ends hoping they score 1. Your tight end scores 3, that's major points. Everett was healthy. Everett played. Everett didn't receive a target. Higbee's the guy for the Rams. You don't need to doubt him. Lock it in. It was a poor week 1. Forget about that. Tyler Higbee is a starter moving forward in tight end leagues, super flex leagues. Higbee's a really great option. You're lucky if you have him on your team.
Kosher killer, jump in.
And I am going to keep that party going with a man I wish I played. And that's Atlanta tight end Hayden Hurst. 5 catches on 8 targets, 72 yards. You mentioned if your tight end gets you a score, you're happy. He did just that. The Falcons are trying to kind of move their offense away from going to Julio Jones. They're going more to guys like Hurst and like Calvin Ridley.
Before we get into our over and under reactions on top disappointments, any other notable top performances this week in week 2?
I don't know if you guys expect this one, but I'm gonna give some love to the rook, Justin Herbert. 22 fantasy points. It's not the biggest fantasy week. QBs have been in that range. Tyrod went to the hospital the day of. Herbert didn't have the week. He was not announced the starter until day of. I don't know what's really going on with the Chargers, but they say Tyrod's the starter regardless of any of that. Herbert came out and played really well against the Kansas City Chiefs in a game where you hear, oh man, rookie QB starting. Camp word wasn't that he was absolutely tearing it up, and he comes out, has 311 yards, a touchdown, a pick, 18 yards, and rushes for a touchdown, and he keeps that team in the game. That game went to overtime. The Chargers were right there. They had the lead. The Chargers were in the lead for most of that game. Sure, it did slip away from them at the end. Butker hit a ridiculous 58-yarder 3 times. So I want to just take this moment and give some props to Justin Herbert because that's a great rookie debut. You deserve some recognition. Shout out Justin Herbert.
Nah, I guess I'll throw it back at you.
I mentioned the Titans earlier, and we can go down the list of guys who had great days. Dalton Schultz for the Cowboys had a great day. Mo Alley Cox had a great day. Jonnu Smith had a great day for the Titans. I'm going to go with a guy who's literally leading this Atlanta passing attack, and that's Calvin Ridley. Just another phenomenal week from Calvin Ridley, being in that top 3 to 4 as far as points per game fantasy-wise these first 2 weeks. This guy is hot. We talked about it earlier in the preseason before the draft, the volume these guys are going to be pushing. As far as the Atlanta Falcons offense, Calvin Ridley is the beneficiary of everything Matt Ryan is throwing. And, there's still a little bit left for other guys like Russell Gage and Hayden Hurst and Julio Jones who can't seem to get in the end zone. But, yeah, Calvin Ridley is, he's on his way to being this year's Chris Godwin.
Kosher killer, jump in here.
I'm going to go with Dak Prescott. Man balled out, 450 yards, had the score, had the late comeback. It sure as hell didn't hurt that they were playing from behind and had to throw the ball around the yard a bit. But he made the most of it. The only thing I'd like to see is getting the touchdowns up a little bit. He's got 1 each in each of the first 2 weeks. Waiting to see if once he's starting to hit multiple touchdowns per game.
And he has Dak Prescott, so he can pat himself on the back on that one.
Hey, I not only had him, I was smart enough to play him, unlike Hayden Hurst, possible friend of the podcast.
Great. Let's get into some top disappointments. For starters, we'll start with Julio Jones. He's coming off a 4-target, 2-reception, 24-yard performance with the emergence of guys like Russell Gage, Calvin Ridley turning out monster games. Are we under or overreacting to Julio Jones' performance this week? I'll start with you, Kosher.
I think we're underreacting. I mentioned it earlier. I think we're seeing the Falcons going away from Julio Jones. We're seeing them throwing at the tight end. So Hurst is had his breakout game. Right now, I think Julio Jones is kind of the forgotten man. He's been invisible for too many weeks to really be still starting in a lot of leagues. Too inconsistent.
Look, we all know the talent that Julio Jones is. He's been there and done that. Nice, jump in here.
You know what? It's starting to become a trend. I mean, Julio Jones puts up big numbers. Obviously, I'd love to have Julio Jones. A lot of people would love to have Julio Jones on their team. I just don't think we're overreacting. I think this offense is fleshed with, options on certain times, certain games. You're going to miss the mark with Julio Jones. You're going to end up with a score that you weren't really expecting. So, yeah, I don't think it's an overreaction at all. I mean, I think this is something that you're going to see continue at least a few more times throughout the year. You're going to see him just, with these kinds of games.
Big baller brand. We over or underreacting to Julio Jones?
I'm not. I'm going to say I'm overreacting a little bit. And I'm going to compare him to a cross-sport buddy who I think is really comparable to Julio. Julio Jones might be this year's fantasy LeBron James. And before you guys think that's a good thing, let me hit y'all with my opinion of LeBron James in fantasy. LeBron James was either resting and missing games 2 seasons ago, or he was doing what he did this year, which is resting on the court and letting somebody else handle it. And I think that's what we're looking at with Julio Jones. Julio Jones is like LeBron. He's there for the playoffs. He's not there for the regular season. When you need him, he's there. He will get you like a week 1, 12 targets, 9 receptions, 157 yards. But if the Falcons don't need him that week, if Ridley's rolling, if Gage is reeling in his receptions, if Hurst is playing up to the volume that he saw last week, Julio Jones is going to LeBron James it. He's going to give you 11 points, 4 assists, he's going to give you 4 targets, 2 receptions, 24 yards. Ultimately, that does drop him. We were looking at him as a second-round pick, and maybe we were mistaken. Maybe Calvin Ridley should have been the second-round pick. Julio Jones probably needed to be a late third. I'm taking him in the second round, assumed that he was going to be a Devontae Adams, a Tyreek Hill, one of these top performers, and he just might not be that anymore. He still has the talent and the skill, and he's still athletic enough. We hear hamstring issues, so management, right? It's the same thing. It's a reason for a player to let a younger guy on his team who's skilled take greater volume and allow your body to rest, not take the beating through a full season so that you're available when the team truly needs you. Julio Jones is my LeBron James pick, and I'm really happy that I have not drafted either of those two guys in any of my fantasy leagues this year.
I mean, we alluded to it in our first actual podcast about Calvin Ridley taking that role in the offense. You certainly see it happening on the field this year. Okay. Tom Brady is making this list for the second straight week after his 217, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and fumble loss performance. I think most would agree that their win on Sunday came by the efforts of the running backs. You had Leonard Fournette doing his thing. Are we over or underreacting to Tom Brady at 2 straight ducks? I'll start with you, Big Baller.
I think that we are underreacting just a little bit. Sure, he's had some injuries to his receiving core, which I think is a part of the reason that we're underreacting. Mike Evans didn't get off until week 2 because he struggled with an injury week 1. Chris Godwin missed week 2 with a concussion, might miss week 3, although recent reports suggest that it's possible he could be active. So that would be a huge benefit for Tom. I still don't think this offense looks like it's running on all cylinders. Next week is a matchup against Denver, followed by a matchup against the Chargers, followed by a matchup against Chicago, then Green Bay. This is not getting much easier for Tom, and they're not in sync yet. It could happen during these next couple weeks, but it wouldn't surprise me either if they still kind of have this little disjointedness, if Tom is still tossing out a couple turnovers throughout the next 3 weeks. He does have Las Vegas in week 7. So if I'm trying to buy Tom Brady, I'm trying to buy him before week 7, because week 7 against Vegas, followed by New York. Those could be 2 really big weeks. You might not be able to buy him at that point for your roster, but I also don't think he's a guy that I'm giving up too much for.
Nye, jump in here, brother.
No, I hit it on the point. It was straight on point. Not a guy in any kind of format I'd want to start week to week. It's going to take some time for them to get on, the same page. We see Rob Gronkowski, he's having a slow start to the season. Ronald Jones is kind of in the middle, kind of up and down. Leonard Fournette kind of surprised a lot of people out there. A lot of owners are out there hoping he's the lead back now because, I think that's something you can come to expect from Leonard Fournette. If you're playing, in a 2-quarterback league and you have the time to wait and wait for, the back end of the season, the second half of the season, the fantasy season, he might bring better value then. I know a lot of owners drafted him kind of earlier than expected, expecting him, to have that 50 touchdown season. And it looks like he's out there just throwing it to Randy Moss all over again, with Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. But it's going to take some time with this offense. And they're better for going through their running game right now. There's a lot to figure out in that offense, which makes the target share the target share kind of unpredictable.
Y'all ready for some pick two?
Yes, sir.
One offense and one defensive guy on the waiver wire that we like. First, I'll start with you, Nye. Who you got?
There, I like Dalton Schultz in that Cowboy offense. Dalton Schultz looks like a guy who, who's going to get 5 or 6 targets a game and give you, 50 to 60 yards. That's a solid day from a tight end. I think he could be a productive player. He's my one right now on offense on the waiver wire that I think I'd go with.
Kosher, hit us with it.
All right, I'll start with my IDP, and that's going to be Harold Landry. Man's already made 9 tackles, including 1 tackle for loss. He had his second career interception. The 9 tackles tells me that he's getting involved in plays, and I think that's a good sign. The tackle for loss means he is able to get into the backfield a little bit, so I'm looking to see if he's able to build on it. For the offensive player, I'm going to look at Zach Pascal on the Colts. Paris Campbell just went down with a knee injury. We don't know how long he's going to be out for. And the Colts said today that they're going to have Pascal get a lot of looks as the slot receiver. He's only got 3 catches, but he's made the most of it with 1 touchdown so far.
I like the Zach Pascal call. He was one of their more productive receivers last year. Big baller brand, who you got? Pick two.
Pick two. I got 2 for you guys. I'm gonna start off with my defensive guy as well. I'm gonna go with Khari Willis, safety for the Indianapolis Colts. He's had 2 strong weeks, second season, but after 2 little reliable weeks, next week he plays the Jets. I'll be honest, I really love the Colts' schedule upcoming for their DBs and safeties. So Khari Willis, his teammate Kenny Moore as well. Khari's kind of showed me a little bit more fantasy production with the ability to make the big play, a sack in week 1 and the pick in week 2. He's got 3 more matchups. 4 more if you want to consider Burrow a matchup that you want to target with your DBs and safeties, and I'm never against it as long as it's a rookie quarterback, because I think these next 3 weeks there's going to be some interceptions and some turnovers to be had with New York, Chicago, and Cleveland all on the docket. Somebody's making a big play each one of those weeks on the Colts defense, in my opinion. Khari Willis is a good bet this week for me. And on offense, I'm going to go a little bit of deep dive. Shout out Kosher and your 49ers. I'm going to go with Jeff Wilson, because I have seen this storyline play out before. Tevin Coleman's got an AC joint sprain. It doesn't look like he's playing this week. Raheem Mostert has already been labeled as out. So we're looking at Jerick McKinnon and Wilson being called up from the practice squad. Last time that this happened, a lot of people started going towards the idea that, oh man, Tevin Coleman's going to get all the run. And Jeff Wilson pops out of nowhere. The running game is still going to be a focal point for the 49ers, and they're still going to do a good job. I expect a really productive game from Wilson. I know McKinnon is the pickup, but I don't think that McKinnon is an every possession, every down back for this team. That's not what they're playing him as. That's not what they've used him as so far this season, and I don't think they're just going to all of a sudden convert him over. He's not a guy that you're just going to give every single touch to. So I think Wilson gets a lot of that groundwork, and I think that's super valuable for the 49ers. If Wilson walks away with a couple 100 yards and a touchdown, don't be at all surprised. I'm calling Jeff Wilson's name this week.
Love myself some Jeff Wilson. We talked about waivers on our early show on Monday. Any other guys out there on the waiver wire you guys could recommend to our viewers out there? I'll start with you, Nye.
Yeah, my defensive player, I'm going to go with Quinnen Williams, who showed up this last weekend with 2 sacks, did a forced fumble, 7 tackles, a guy who might be out there on the waiver wire who looks to kind of showing good signs. Like, these are good signs. It's not easy to go out there and get 2 sacks. You can't walk in 2 sacks. He's showing up. He's showing out on the film. Definitely a guy I'm keeping my eye on.
Big baller brand.
This is just going to be my what is it called? My little quick side pick up Jonnu Smith if he's still on your waiver wires. With AJ Brown out, we saw the Titans send those targets Jonnu Smith's way. If he's a tight end that's out on your waiver wire, you guys need to go grab him now. He was hyped over the offseason, but I remember personally being a little bit skeptical. I liked his film. I liked the athleticism with the ball, but I didn't like the history of, well, he's had a couple games as the guy. But it really looks like now Jonnu Smith is taking advantage of the opportunity. This week doesn't seem like an aberration to me. It doesn't seem like something that's only going to happen once. So Jonnu Smith is my waiver wire guy. If he's out there, I know he's still available in plenty of leagues. So pick up Jonnu Smith. Don't leave him out there anymore.
And if he's on your bench, please play him. Shots fired. All right, moving to our last segment. It's called Keeping That Same Energy. Last week we had Corey Davis going against Sammy Watkins. They both kind of had so-so days. I believe Corey Davis did get in the end zone off 3 catches. He didn't have the 8 targets he had the week before, but he was able to kind of pad his fantasy output with a touchdown on Sunday. This week, we've got Jordan Reed going against Jonnu Smith. Jordan Reed had 8 targets, 7 receptions and 50 yards and 2 touchdowns on Sunday. With the injury to George Kittle and other skill positions, do we see Jordan Reed keeping the same energy, or do we see Jonnu Smith keeping that same energy in his 5 target, 4 reception, 84-yard, 2 touchdown performance? I'll start with you, Kosher. Who's keeping the same energy today?
I'm going with Jonnu Smith. I want to go with Jordan Reed as a Niner fan, but the drop-off from Jimmy Garoppolo to Nick Mullins makes me very concerned. Nick Mullins did his best impersonation of Elvis Gerback in relief of Jimmy, going 8 of 11, but throwing a pick as one of the 3 that he didn't hit a Niners receiver on. I don't know how quickly he's going to be able to develop that chemistry with the receivers. For me as a Niner fan, it's a source of concern, whereas Smith does have chemistry with the Titans offense. I've got a lot more confidence in Jonnu Smith keeping up that production than I've gotten Jordan Reed, and that's just because of consistency at the quarterback position.
Nye, who's keeping that same energy?
I think it's Jonnu Smith almost by, default. I mean, George Kittle, by all, indications, is going to play this weekend. Nick Mullins, George Kittle had his best year with Nick Mullins at quarterback. He's going to get every target he wants, because him and Nick Mullins have a really good chemistry. I think this is Jonnu Smith by default. Even if A.J. Brown somehow plays this week, I still think Jonnu Smith is going to keep up that energy as much as he can. He had a great week last week.
Bigballer Edgar, who's keeping that same energy, brother?
It's definitely Jonnu Smith for me, but I do want to talk about Jordan Reed for a moment. Jordan Reed is attractive, even with Kittle coming back. I think he's a deep streamer. Last week he had the most receptions for this team, and that's just to say, like, there's nobody healthy in their receiving core who is a better option than Reed. If Kittle's back, obviously it's Kittle, but we still have to wait one more week before they get Deebo Samuel off the IR, and I think that's where we start to talk about why isn't Jordan Reed keeping the same energy? Because they are getting healthy guys back. Kittle is going to be back. Deebo is going to be back. We expect Ayuk to develop as the season goes along. Jordan Reed had 7 receptions last week. That might be the most, I'll go out and say it right now. That's the most receptions Jordan Reed is going to have in a game this season, barring even more serious injuries to the 49ers. And let's just hope that really doesn't happen. I don't want to put that out there. Jordan Reed might have just had his best game of the season, and there's no reason for him to continue this when they've got their starters returning healthy. Jonnu Smith obviously took the opportunity while A.J. Brown was injured, but he still can be that second guy. He can still take turns with Corey Davis. They can still have an effective offensive system with Jonnu Smith as a major cog in it. Whereas when Jordan Reed, the 49ers get healthy, Jordan Reed's going to go back to what you saw week 1, which was not a playable guy. He was a guy who they have on the field for football reasons, but football reasons don't always equate to fantasy. Jonnu Smith, keep that same energy.
That wraps up our show for today. Very quickly, just want to thank all our new subscribers. Just want to encourage you guys to like, subscribe, share, hit that notification bell. We've been getting a lot of requests on the select touches. So you guys make sure you guys keep sending those in. We'll try to feature as many players as we can. For myself, Bigballer Edgar, for Kosher Killer for a night that's Ian spelled backward. The champ. He's 0-2, but he's still the champ. We select Start Podcast, man. We out of here.